Managing a team of investigators just got easier with TrackOps, the all-in-one case management software. Are you ready to enhance case flows and drive efficiency? TrackOps offers powerful management and coordination tools to streamline workflows and communication, all designed to keep your team synchronized and focused on the task at hand. With TrackOps, you can easily distribute workloads, track individual performance, and ensure deadlines are met. Plus, the TrackOps mobile app allows investigators to access case activities on the go. And the TrackOps video app allows for simple and consistent timestamping, all included at no extra cost. Start streamlining your investigation process today. Visit trackops.com for a free 15-day trial and experience the power of efficient team management. TrackOps, empowering teams, simplifying management. The Campbell Group has teamed up with PI Perspectives to offer listeners top-notch, affordable insurance solutions. Private investigators can get insurance for their business for as low as $305 per year. Apply now at piperspectivesinsurance.com and receive a quote back within 24 hours. NCISS is our industry's legislative watchdog. Since 1975, NCISS has employed lobbyists in Washington, D.C. to protect the rights of private investigators and security guard companies. Their efforts have protected our industry as we have faced attacks on access to data like criminal records and driving records. Learn more at nciss.org. Do you enjoy our podcast and the guests we bring you? Since 2019, Matt and his team have done their very best to give you amazing shows each week. If you feel like our show has helped you to be a better investigator, or maybe even inspired you to become an investigator, please let us know. We're looking for testimonials. Drop Matt an email with a recorded 20 to 30 seconds of you talking about this podcast. You can also email him something verbal about the website. His email is matthews@satellitepi.com. And if you really feel blessed for having this content, consider supporting Matt and our show by joining Investigators Toolbox. You really have to see version 2.0. And at just 49 cents a day, it's a no-brainer. Now let's jump in to this week's episode. Welcome to this week's show. Today we remember Jim Zimmer from Benchmark Investigations in California. Jim tragically suffered an injury in early May that left him incapacitated. On June 2nd, Jim lost his battle trying to recover. Today, Eddie Ajabe is back to remember Jim and discuss some of the legislative issues that NCISS has been working on. Legislation was Jim's passion, and we want to dedicate this entire episode to his memory. You can honor Jim by visiting nciss.org and making a regular donation. The message board has been full of tributes, and you can see how he's affected our industry in a positive light. Let's welcome Eddie Ajabe and your host, private investigator Matt Spare.
And welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spare, your host. As you heard in the intro, we're dedicating this episode to an investigator that both I and our guest here today we're very friendly with. We just had a chat with this individual less than a month ago, and just shocked to hear of his passing. And for those of you who don't know, we're talking about Jim Zimmer from California, Benchmark Investigations. Just a great, amazing person in our industry. And I asked Eddie Ajabe to come back on. I know we had Ed on recently, but I wanted to cover some of the things that were very passionate to Jim and some of the things that NCISS was working on, and just to highlight it a little bit further, to honor him in his memory. So, Eddie, I want to welcome you back to the program. How are you?
Good, Matt. Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on to talk about all this stuff, because you do have a lot of insider, knowledge of what was going on in the boardrooms, and being on the legislative committee for NCISS, some of the things that we were doing and talking about, and still ongoing. And I just wanted to talk about that. But let's talk a little bit about Jim. I met him years ago, probably at an NCISS event or maybe even a Cali event. I think probably a Cali event was the first time I met him, maybe back in 2017. Um, and just an amazing individual, somebody who, made a career basically working for himself by himself and using a lot of subcontractors and just building out a respectable business in California. And somebody towards the end of his life that really got involved in legislation. I understand prior to that, he had been heavily involved in legislation, stepped back for a bunch of years, and then within the last like 2 years or so, just really, really started to come back in it. What was your relationship with Jim Head?
Yeah, I'd also met Jim a few years ago. I also can't remember if it was a Cali event or NCISS event, and always knew him as a very affable guy, very influential in the industry long before I was in the industry, probably long before I was born, and for that reason, a lot of people respected him. He tutored and mentored a lot of people who have now been successful in the industry for decades. So he really leaves a very huge void in the profession and also within the professional circles within the associations like Cali and NCISS. And really through the last couple of years, like you said, I had the pleasure of working with Jim very closely on legislative issues. Him and I actually co presented a presentation for NCISS on the Department of Labor rule and a couple of other issues. So I had the privilege of getting to know him even closer over the last year or so on some of these committees.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when I first was asked to volunteer for the legislative committee, it's like I wear a lot of hats, man. I got a lot of things going on. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm doing a lot. And I was asked to be a part of it, and it's something I think is important for the industry. So I was like, okay, you know what, I can add one more thing here. I don't know how much I can contribute to it, but I want to be a part of it. So let me see what I can do here. And man, within I don't know, a couple of days, I just started getting the emails from Jim. It's like, hey, I need you to do this. I need you to do that. Like, this is our function. This is, our goals here, what we're trying to do. And I was just like, this guy's really taking the bull by the horns here. I think when we were having dinner, last month, that was one of the first things I said to him when the three of us were sitting down, was like, hey man, I just want to say, like, I'm really impressed with what you've done with the legislative committee. We're actually meeting on a regular basis. Once a month, we're having discussions, and I think we got to give some credit to Kelly Corey as well, the president of NCISS, because both of those people working together to get this up and running and really making sure that NCISS is doing what it's supposed to do, like look out for the best interest legislatively for our industry. I feel like there was a lot going on, and Jim, he was just amazing at um, handing out tasks to people and just being very organized and rallying the troops. And it's like, okay, this isn't a new Jack that's saying to do this. This is a guy who's been around the block a few times, and it's like, if he's asking you to do this, you should probably do it, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was able to whip up a very strong committee of many people in almost no time, and I think that spoke to his ability to be an influential person in the industry and an influential leader. And really, I don't know too many people that would have been able to do that and convince so many people to get involved. But it was because of Jim and who he was, and wanting to contribute to something that Jim was a part of and was leading. I think inspired a lot of people to participate.
Truly believed in it. I mean, he was all in on doing that and rallying the troops. One of the things I really appreciated was the fact that the committee was so big. And it's like, okay, so one person can't do everything, right? Or, you were asked to do something. It's like, oh man, like I really got to be in court this week. I got to testify. I really can't do this. Okay, no problem. We'll just move on to the next person, right? And there were just so many able body hands, and he handpicked that. I mean, he really did. It's like, okay, these are the people I want to work with. And it was just it was a pleasure to do that and be on top of it. The one thing I would say about Jim though is don't talk politics. Like he's a legislative guy. If you start talking politics and he doesn't agree with your politics, he's gonna let you know about it for sure, man. And those of you that were friends with him on Facebook know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole. But Jim, he had some political views for sure.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I've had I do know that a lot of people on the list of committee members. I was just in awe of some of the people that Jim put together on this list are really many other heavy hitters in the profession, and I was so happy and inspired really to see how he was really able to bridge so many people together for that committee and to get things done. And I think and hope that we will continue to succeed in that way, and that Jim will continue to be an inspiration for many of us to continue on in his legacy.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for people to kind of step up and say, okay, we were trying to achieve this goal. This is a big kick in the pants here. We obviously have to regroup, but I think it's on us, like everybody, just to do a little bit more. I mean, I saw like Andrea Roscoe like stepped in and said, "Hey, like I'll help," right? And Andrea's fantastic. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who's served and done so much for this industry. It's like she put her time in, she did so much, and then kind of stepped back a little bit. I said, okay, I got to focus on my business a little bit, focus on my at home life and this and that. And for her, like I saw like one of the first people come up and say, well, what do you need me to help? What do you want me to do? Like that's a testimony on who Jim was and what he was standing for. That's so many people now. Justin Hodgson's another guy. It's like you see this like, wow, he mentored me and I am who I am. Like have this business that I have because of guys like Jim and the influence that he had on just taking me under his wing. And that's something that the California Association is really good at doing. Um, Making sure that they're equipping younger investigators, not only how to do the job, but how to advocate for our industry and how to make sure, because everybody knows the nonsense starts in California. And making sure that there are able bodies out there that are, making sure that we're being taken care of. People like Francie Kaler, making sure that legislatively, we're being looked after. Even Frank Huntington, another one, he put out such a nice message about Jim on the Cali board. I mean, you can't help. And it's just like all weekend, I was talking to my wife about this, like all weekend, bing, 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 the messages are coming in. I'm like, wow, like this is impressive. Everybody's just, they've got their Jim story, right? Their little thing about, how he helped them grow their business, and then they are who they are because of the influence and the just the kindness that he had towards his fellow investigator. Super impressive.
Yeah, and I actually had that exact same thought, Matt, earlier this morning when I was sort of thinking about some of the remarks I was going to make and on the show, and really, all of us at some point, for some people, it's a thought that occurs to us very regularly, is our legacy
Mhm.
as business owners, as we grow and expand our business, and as we leave our mark on the profession and on the industry. What kind of legacy do we want to have? And although Jim's passing was very unexpected, I think he absolutely left a very a lasting legacy on the industry, just by the number of people who commented on the mark that he left on their lives and on their career. But it's something that we all ought to think of. And I think Jim has been an inspiration in that way. It's incalculable the number of hours that he has contributed over his entire career and throughout his life to helping the profession and helping to advance the industry. And I think that's what a lot of people should reflect on, is that if it's been a while since you've been involved in an association, or you haven't yet found the time to volunteer or step up or just be more involved, now might be the time to do that, because we are our own army, and we're the only ones who are going to stand up for ourselves. And it's easy to brag about how well business is going and talk on, social media and things like that, but it's another thing to contribute hours to the betterment of the profession and to really step in and do that. And I would, welcome and encourage anybody who wants to do that. I've had a great time contributing my time into the industry, into the associations as well. So the doors are open, and we're definitely welcome. And we have Jim to thank for leaving some big shoes to fill, and giving us that that inspiration.
Yeah, and we'll put links in the show notes to NCISS and Cali. Also, like if you wanted to get involved, like go check out their websites. And I encourage you, because like politicians are not your friend. Like they don't have your best interest. They have one goal and one goal only. It's to get reelected. And sometimes selling on fear about, hey, your data is not safe out there. We need to limit, privacy matters. Like, we're collateral damage on that if we don't have somebody like Jim that's going to say, hey, wait a second, we understand the importance of that issue, but here's why we need to continue doing what we're doing. And guess what? That puts food on our plate. That is what allows us to continue to grow our businesses and do what we need to do. So if you're not involved, if you don't have the time to be involved, make a donation, because you never know when you need it until you need it. And I've been on those meetings with our lobbyists, and it's impressive. The lobbyists for NCISS, I've been in the room for that and seeing what's going on, and the things that are out there and how they monitor everything. It's super important. And we've done episodes on this before. I've talked about it, so I don't want to go too much into it further. There are some topics, some things that are kind of kicking around that I wanted to talk about, just in the spirit of Jim Zimmer and the things that were important to him. I want to highlight these things. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to jump in to those three issues and just bring a little highlight to some of these things. So everybody sit tight, and we will be right back.
After 4 years of development, Scope Now is proud to announce the release of Grid. Grid combines OSINT with real-time physical data to achieve new levels of intelligence gathering. Grid supports over 50 data types and hundreds of thousands of sources. Upgrade your OSINT capabilities with Grid and elevate your intelligence team today at scopenow.com. Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Are you drowning in fees with your current provider? IRB Search offers the highest quality data at the most competitive prices. Founded by investigators for investigators, IRB is tailored specifically toward helping you close your cases. We're currently offering PI Perspective listeners an exclusive 30-day free trial of our system. So simply go to irbsearch.com and apply using the promo code PIP30 to claim this promotion.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Sperry, your host. Today we're joined by another one of my co-hosts, Eddie Jeb. Eddie, I want to welcome you back to the program, Nighthawk Strategies. Once upon a time in Washington, D.C., now out west. So welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about Jim Zimmer, an amazing person, big loss to our industry. And, Jim had really taken up the cause of advocating for legislative oversight, making sure that we can do what we need to do. He was the chair for the legislative committee for the National Council of Investigative and Security Services. And there were a couple of hot button issues here that we have been talking about this year, things that were kind of percolating and bubbling up. And I know we had done a webinar there at CSS. You had mentioned that earlier that you co-hosted that with Jim. But before we jump into that, I want to talk about the first issue here. This is the BOI report through FinCEN. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what that is and what we're required to do?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a new law called the Corporate Transparency Act that was passed a couple years ago, and it just takes effect now, where it requires businesses to report their beneficial ownership information to the U.S. Department of Treasury. And the aim of the Corporate Transparency Act is to enhance transparency in the U.S. financial system, for things like, financial crimes, investigations, and understanding any sort of foreign influence or foreign ownership of businesses in the US. And as many people know, if you set up a business in the US, or especially an LLC, in many cases, the owners and shareholders of those businesses are private, and they will still be. This doesn't really change it. It just requires the Treasury Department to collect information on who's owning these businesses, and that data will be accessible only to law enforcement and financial institutions under limited circumstances. So in a nutshell, it's a new law that's requiring everyone to fill out a quick form about the ownership structure of their business. And many people may already be familiar with this if you do the same for your in your Secretary of State LLC paperwork. Who owns the business, where's the business based, things of that nature.
Yeah, is that similar to the like the declaration that you need to do like every 2 years, or is it something different?
Yeah, it's very similar to that. In this case, you have just an initial filing with the Treasury Department under their Financial Crimes Enforcement Network branch of the Treasury Department. And then you're pretty much good to go. If there's anything changes in your business, I think you have to let them know within 30 days, and you just go onto the website and file an updated report. But there's no cost to do it. It's all done online, and just for most businesses, it's going to be a fairly straightforward process.
Sure. And I think one of the main reasons they're doing this is, obviously, having those foreign entities that are setting up dummy corporations here in the U.S., where there's that influence of foreign governments, right? We're trying to cut down on that, and I believe that's probably the driving factor for this. It's just another database to house all that information. Probably something that's subpoenable, like if you need to down the line, I would think. But it is not going to be a data set that's available for the John Q public, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's mainly a regulatory filing requirement, so that the federal investigators, state and local investigators can use it when needed to combat large scale money laundering, terrorism financing, pretty much large scale financial crimes and things like that.
So it wouldn't be something that's available via FOIL or anything like that, right?
Correct. Yeah, at this time, it doesn't look like it will be publicly accessible in that way. It is interesting to see too, though, how FOIA actually brings up a very interesting question: is that can that information be? And to an extent, I think that the way the Corporate Transparency Act sort of defined how it will be initially, it will just be this federal law enforcement database and repository. But it'll be interesting to see perhaps how the private sector might benefit, especially banks, certainly being that it's a financial reporting requirement.
Yeah.
Another private sector may be interested in it.
Yeah, I guess we'll to be determined. Yeah, we'll see what politician makes some waves about what, right?
Right.
Who knows? Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was and this was something that came out recently, and I don't know how much we really dug into it, but I did see some chatter on some of the message boards about it. Was this anti-compete ruling that came out. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the Federal Trade Commission recently came out with a new regulatory rule that essentially bans non-compete
Okay.
agreements nationwide. And some states have already started to crack down on this as a labor issue, and the Federal Trade Commission is taking on the position that non-compete agreements are anti-competitive and that they will prevent people from being able to innovate and things like that. There are currently at least one, probably many other suits that are trying to basically find an injunction against this rule to stop it from happening. So it'll remain to be seen how that plays out. But for folks who don't know, a non-compete agreement is essentially if you hire an employee and you don't want that employee to then take, spend a few months at your company and then leave and start their own investigation firm and, take your clients and your
Clients, trade secrets,
trade
how to
secrets
do
and things
this.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
So this could end up being a very big deal, I think, for some investigators who, your client list is probably one of the most valuable assets you have, as well as the knowledge that you impart on your employees. So I can see this one being a contentious issue for the industry.
Yeah, and I was seeing some language about how they were saying that it was, for like the everyday worker, they were going to enforce this and say you can't use the non-compete agreement. But it was like if you had an executive that made over a certain amount of money, and I think it was 150K, but don't hold me to it. If they made over 150K, that you could enforce, the non-compete agreement with them. So I know there was some back and forth on that as well as to what it was going to finally look like and what the final ruling would be on that, right?
That's right. Yeah, there's some exemptions and caveats to the rule, and it's possible that some of those criteria could change as the rule is being challenged. And also something that our NCISS lobbyist brought up to us is that because this is an election year, we may see an entirely different, may or may not see an entirely different change in some of these regulatory policies come November and thereafter. So it's kind of just hold on tight and wait and see
Yeah,
how
it's
things
nonsense.
might shake up in a lot of ways in Washington.
Yeah, we just had some ridiculous news here in New York today too. So one of the hot button issues in the five boroughs New York City area is they're implementing additional tolls, like congestion pricing, right? You come into Manhattan, you're going to pay an extra $15 just to be in Manhattan between the hours of 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. An extra $15. Just nonsense. But you have to they voted it into law. It was supposed to, start on June 30th. And then you started hearing about some lawsuits. The state of New Jersey wanted to do an injunction because they thought it wasn't fair for the people that live in New Jersey that work in New York City. How are they going to, they're now going to get hit with this extra money they have to pay every day, which is nuts, right? As an investigator, I approached it like, okay, well, that sucks, but I'm just going to pass that cost along to my client and said, cost of doing business in New York City. I'm sorry. So you talk about politics and elections coming. So today there was this announcement that the governor of New York is pausing it indefinitely. And if you read between the lines and you start digging into it, there are probably a lot of heavy Democrat voters in New York City that now would have to pay this extra money to work. And the way that they respond to issues like that they're not happy about is they vote for the other person. Like, oh, well, this person just hit me with this tax, or this toll, I'm gonna just vote for the other person, right? So I think they thought about it and said, you know what? If we do this, we may actually lose control of the state. Like there'll be people that are going to get voted out because of this. Maybe we should hold off on it, right? And it's like, okay, well, that's interesting. This was a ridiculous thing to begin with, but now, like, you're seeing politics, how it all plays out, and you start talking about presidential elections. And one of the things that the Republican candidate was talking about that if he's elected, he's going to just void out that, that law to begin with because he happens to reside within that district that would be required to pay every day, right? So it's like, all right, you see how things are lining up here and how politics can affect things and just the pure nonsense of it. So I would not be surprised to see things not go forward until after November, just because there are people that really feel strongly about these issues on both sides, right? And the feeling is they're probably going to vote their conscience on that, and maybe that's too risky for the politician that's out there, right?
Exactly, right. And even in primary elections too. I mean, Washington D.C. had its local primary elections just the other day, and a lot of the incumbents, the different ward districts in D.C. Faced pretty strong challenges because of the issues that are going on locally in D.C., just like New York City and many other places. So a lot of these policy and regulatory issues are kind of kicked around like a football when it comes to
Yeah.
the actual politics and the mechanics of how all this stuff works. So it'll be interesting to see how things do shake out, being that it's a very active election year.
Yeah. I think it's more like rugby than football. I feel like they're just
Yeah,
constantly
it's a lot more high contact than football.
we'll call it Australian rules football.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's take a look at the third issue here. Something I know that Jim was really, really passionate about. And this is the whole Department of Labor memo with regards to subcontracting and the ability to hire somebody to do something that you do as well, even though they're not employees of yours, and whether or not they would have to be classified as an employee. So let's talk about that a little further.
Yeah, so this is something that we've also been following for several months at NCISS, and Jim and I co-presented on this to our membership back in March when the Department of Labor rule went into effect. And essentially, the Department of Labor issued a rule about how independent contractors are classified and how they're defined differently from employees. So they issued some new guidelines that rescinded previous guidelines that were already in effect a few years ago. And out of the six guidelines or six criteria, five of them kind of seem okay from our personal view as on the side of being investigators. But there is one criteria that did raise some concerns for us as an association and that we presented on, which is the extent to which the work that's being performed by the independent contractor is an integral part of the employer's business. And it just seems very ambiguous to say, well, if somebody is doing work for you that's an integral part of your business, then they should be an employee. Well, what if I only hire them to do one thing? What if they're in a different state? What if they're so a lot of questions sort of came up because that rule just sort of left a lot of things wide open for questions on how that's going to be applied. So essentially, that's another thing that we're waiting for more regulatory clarity. There are a few court cases going on right now about how that rule might play out.
Yeah, and that's a slippery slope. It's all questions about, well, like I'm hiring this person who does what I do, and like the way it's written, even if you hire them for one day, like you have to W-2 that person if they only work for you for eight or 10 hours. Like that's a little ridiculous. And then, I can just see the comp insurance carriers just licking their lips, just going, okay, we've got all these employees now, like it's gonna totally screw with the formulas of how they charge you for your workers' comp insurance, right? And that's a real deal. If someone's a W-2 and you got to worker comp them, like now you got to pay them less because you got to cover their comp. Like it opens such a Pandora's box of nonsense. Really kind of scary, actually.
Right. And in many cases, it's, some states will require you to you have to open up a payroll withholding account, an unemployment insurance account, and in Oregon we have several other ones like a workers benefit fund, and it takes time for those accounts to be open, even though you can do everything online now. But it's it will not only it result in more costs, but it will result in lag times that will just be that will make the work being done impossible to do. I mean, if you have to wait 90 days to open up a withholding account, things like that. So it will definitely create a lot of obstacles in addition to just economic ones.
Yeah, I mean, unemployment insurance too. It's another thing, right? Paid family leave.
Mhm.
It's like those are all extra little tag-ons we get when we're doing our payroll. Um, the business owner is going to be responsible for all that if they're considered W-2 employees, and like I get the spirit of the rule and what they were trying to do on it, but like not taking into consideration like these issues, like this could really put a small business owner out. You just say like, you know what, I can't deal with all this. I'm that dream I have of owning my own business. What this country is kind of built on, that entrepreneurship, it's not worth it. Like there's just too much a hassle of all this other stuff. I'll just go, work for some other company. And then they're really a W-2 employee and we don't have to have issues about it, right?
Right. It comes full circle in that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, and really, that's what we were trying to educate and inform our membership about, what this Department of Labor rule means. And even though we weren't espousing any legal advice or financial advice, just making people aware that this is something to keep on your radar. It's something that might change. It's something that we hope one of two things happens. Either the Department of Labor issues some more clarity around that particular criteria, or there's a legislative fix. So there's actually a bill that's introduced that people can debate on, that they have hearings on, and that sort of fixes this ambiguity, because many private investigators and security professionals and use subcontractors all the time, especially because
You all do.
we're in a business where we have to do that to succeed. So I think the rule is well intended. I mean, it's meant so that you're not just basically amassing an army of subcontractors who are going out and building your business and things like that. But when you have instances where it's appropriate to have a subcontractor, you want to make sure that you're doing it so that it's a mutually beneficial relationship for both you as the business owner and the subcontractor themselves.
Yeah, like I remember having back and forth with my comp carrier because I get audited every year. And they're like, oh, what's all this subcontractor work? Like they just started asking questions about it. It's like so high. It's like, yeah, I mean, if somebody's out in Minnesota is doing work for me, you know, they're not an employee of mine. I'm sorry. Like it's just, if they're doing research, like no, like so like we had that whole back and forth. And when you explain it to when I was able to actually explain it to the correct person over there, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But the initial red flag of the person that was auditing my account, they were like, yeah, I don't like this. This smells a little bit. We gotta dig into this a little bit. So it's very interesting to see how how it all is going to play out, and that's the important thing to understand. Like time marches on. Like we have to carry on. We lost Jim Zimmer, but I think it's upon all of us in the industry to do a little bit more. And like I said, if you can't serve, if you don't have the time to do it, make a donation, even if it's $25. It matters. It really matters. Go to the state association. If you're in California, donate to it, right? If you are national, go to NCISS and donate. Like it's a big deal, and it's like you don't need it until you need it. When nonsense starts like this starts happening, the value of the lobbyist and the level that we're at, sometimes that changes, right? So people don't understand you can't just hire a lobbyist, right? You're at different levels of what they will actually do for you, and it's more expensive for them to do more. So it's like as these issues creep up and you got to start paying more, like somebody needs to bankroll all that, and it needs to be us. It needs to be our own industry, like supporting ourselves. This is our livelihood, people. This is how we do things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we benefit in a lot of ways other than, it, like you said, Matt, if you truly don't have the time to volunteer time and get involved, you can donate, or you can just, you know, share content on social media. I mean, we're associations are always trying to put out information about these new regulations and laws and things like that. And,
Yeah.
give us the thumbs up, or share an article that we wrote, and really get the word out so that more people join, so that we really are, amassing a very powerful force, and that we can, that it will benefit us all. So there are many ways to contribute, and we do, of course, welcome as many people as possible. And Jim left very big shoes to fill, and there's a tremendous upside in being on the inside in the associations and really seeing how the work is done, and being involved in things that ultimately lead to a success for the profession, and carry on a legacy for many years.
Yeah, 100%, man. Very, very well put. And listen, there's a free way for you to help too. Write your congressman, your senator. You know, when these issues come out and there's a plea on the message boards that says, "Hey, we need you to, contact your local congressman or your senator," because when you're calling from their district, they pay attention. They have people in their offices that will tabulate and will take a look at things. So when you're asked to do it, do it. It's free. It takes you 5 minutes, and it really makes a huge, huge difference. So, I listen. I've got a voice out here. There are people that listen to the show, people in our industry that do it. But there are so many people behind the scenes that do these things that are so important, and it's important for us to recognize the Jim Zimmers that are out there, the Kelly Corys, the Francie Kaylors, Kelly Riddle's another guy, that just serves and serves and serves. Wes Bearden. I mean, these are all people that you've seen on the show here before. They're not going to live forever, people. you know, they're not going to be in business forever. I'm not going to be doing this show forever. It's important, for that next man up mentality to be there, or next woman up, to step into those shoes and do things. So a guy like Eddie, who was mentored by Jim, who has really taken this whole NCISS thing very seriously. I want to thank you, man. I want to thank you for donating your time and your energy to getting on and talking about this stuff. People don't realize how important it is, but I salute you for what you do. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And that reminds me of another quick anecdote I have about Jim, is that there was a Cali conference a number of years ago, when we were in a session together, and Jim was sitting behind me, and he said, Ed, hey. And I'm like, what? And he's like, how do you feel about stepping up to be run for a vice president role with NCISS? And I laughed because I thought he was pulling my leg. He was not. And then I took time to think about it, and through his encouragement and many others, I accepted that, to run for that role. And so really, I can literally say I would not be where I am if it weren't for Jim, and if it weren't for the many other people who encouraged me to do it. And it's not really something that I actively sought out, even though, I do now. I definitely look for opportunities. But nobody has to wait to be asked. Like I said, the doors are open, and as the current vice president of NCISS, I personally welcome anyone that wants to get involved. But really, it's again, goes back to the testament of who Jim was, and
Yep.
the inspiration that he left. But also the way that the way that things happen are just things happen in funny ways, and where we meant to be. So I'm grateful for Jim for that, and I appreciate these opportunities, and it's really been a very rewarding path so far.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say about Jim is he had a fantastic taste in music. And that dude just went out and saw a lot of concerts, man. If you were friends with him and on social media, like, you saw all the places that he went and all the concerts. He was constantly going out and watching shows and doing things, and living life. And when he passed away, he was doing something. He was out with his wife doing something that he enjoyed doing, and that's how I want to go. when it's my time. I don't want to collapse in front of my computer doing a podcast and tap out. As much as I love this show, just making sure that there's that balance there. So yeah, I think we're going to wrap up here, and just Ed, thanks again for all you do, and for being gracious and coming on again. I do feel like I got to give you the co-host title the next time you come on. You and Kelly Riddle can bare knuckle box it out and figure out who's going to hold that title. But thank you, and we're going to put in the show notes the Department of Labor, the FinCEN BOI report link, so you can go ahead and get that filed. Make sure you're on top of it. And we're going to put links to NCI's list and Cali, and encourage folks sites. And you can be a member of Cali and not even be in California. They accept out of state membership. And yeah, just thanks everyone for checking the show out, and we'll catch you guys next time on the next episode.
Thanks for checking out our show. Please make sure you follow PI Perspectives on YouTube or on your podcast channel. We hope you got a glimpse of who Jim was and how much he did for our industry. Thanks, Eddie, for coming on and giving us some great updates. We want to thank Campbell Insurance Group for sponsoring the show. Remember to tell them you listen to save $50 when you apply for insurance. Additional thanks to TrackOps, Scope Now, IRB, and PI Institute for Education for sponsoring our podcast. Also, don't forget about investigatorstoolbox.com, where you can type in Perspectives 50 to save $50 when you join. Please also follow Matt and Satellite Investigations on LinkedIn. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We want your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. We'll be back next week with a new show. Make sure you tune in, and please stay safe out there, everyone.